This is the Refuge Project.
Welcome to the Refuge Project. The Refuge Project is a place that we can have meaningful conversation in a safe place. We are your hosts. I am Pastor David. We got James.
Hey.
And a special guest, Pastor Ron.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you here. We're going to talk a little bit about the 100 years of Elim. We got 3.5 weeks away?
Yeah.
Man, I'm 3 weeks from next Sunday.
3 weeks from next Sunday, and we're super excited about all the stuff. Pastors wrote a book, so we've asked him to drop by, and we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. But I'm excited about it. You know, I guess everybody in this room's got some roots that go back a little ways. So I'm learning a lot, learning a little bit about some of the things in the church when my grandmother and stuff started coming over here. And so it's been pretty cool for us.
Yeah. I'm seeing a bunch of those pictures out in the hallway, and I'm remembering people. And then I'm getting everybody telling, everybody, if they see me walking by those photos, they got to say something about, boy, Stacy and Pastor Ron, they sure do look alike.
Yeah,
everybody.
Is that Pastor or is that Stacy?
Yeah, and you have to say, you have to go, that's the first time I heard that.
Yeah. Some of the memories out there are the felt boards in Sunday school class. Yeah, and a lot of people don't remember those, but it's because we do everything digital and stuff now. But yeah. So how's things going?
Things are good. I've been busy. I got let's see. This can come out this Thursday. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've been working on that local Palooza event that I'm putting on Saturday. So I've been busy doing all that stuff.
So that's this Saturday?
Yeah, this Saturday, Burt Crenshaw Park. Gonna have music. Gonna have art. My wife will be there selling ceramics and all that kind of stuff. Got a food truck. I don't know if I told you, but I had a food truck guy that I was like, he does barbecue.
Right.
And I said, but he just started the food truck thing, so he's only done like maybe one or two things where he set up his trailer and sold barbecue. But he said he was down to come, and he's all excited and everything. And I was telling people while we're planning stuff, I said I'm pretty sure he's going to cancel or something's going to go wrong because he's just one of those guys that I was just like, something's going to happen.
Yeah.
And so yesterday I was talking to another guy who's been helping me out with stuff. And originally, this guy's parents were going to bring a food truck because they had just got started one, like a taco truck, selling quesadillas and that kind of stuff. And but they were waiting on some paperwork and this and that. And I was like, well, I'll work on getting somebody else, and we'll see what happens. So then I got the barbecue guy, right? So now I'm talking to the other guy that's parents were supposed to do it. And I was telling him, like, I'm pretty sure this barbecue guy is going to cancel, though, or something. And then we decided, we were like, we'll just have both of them come out because I think we're going to have a pretty solid crowd. And So I text the barbecue guy, telling him, like, hey, we're going to have another truck there, and that way it'll take some of the load off of you, and I think we should have a good crowd. It'll be good. And he texts me back, and he's like, hey, man, I just got some bad news this morning, actually. They were moving our trailer last night, hit something, it's got a crack. I don't think we're even going to be able to make it. And I said, it's too bad, man. We'll see. Let me know if something changes. All right. And so then I hit the guy up again, and I said, the guy that I said was going to cancel just canceled. So I said, it's all your parents now. So
man, it's tough, man, when you put those them shows on because you're relying on so many different people to have something great come together. And we put on many shows, and it's just so stressful because you have this vision, right?
Yeah. And
you want to play this vision out, but you have to rely on people. It was something like Pastor Mark was talking about this Sunday, where teamwork is a dream work. You have to have people around you that can come through, and when you have those flaky ones, man, it's tough.
But I think it's been great though for me with this particular event because all the bands and all the people that are all the different artists and vendors that are coming out, they're all just super excited about it, and they're like, hey, what can we do to help? What do you need? You need this, you need that? And so it's been actually pretty nice. So
to put a time stamp on it, just to make sure people, if they're listening to this before or after, give me the time, date.
Yeah. So it's April 30th, Saturday. Burt Crenshaw Park at the Pavilion there. And it's starting at 1 is when I'm advertising to start. I think the first band goes on at 1:30. And there's like 5 acts total. Me and Ben Eucalyptian, we're gonna play. We're going on at like 6:15, if I'm not mistaken. So it's gonna go from around 1 in the afternoon till like 7 or so.
Cool. Come out. Great
Gonna
music.
be food. Gonna
Good
be
food.
lots of artists. Gonna be cool. It's gonna
Yeah.
be fun. It's gonna be a good day.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very good. Pastor, you're just moving and shaking, writing books, and how's life for you right now?
Well, life's good.
Yeah.
I don't know
About to
about.
turn 80?
I don't know about.
Already turned 80.
You
I
just
don't
turned
know
80.
about moving and shaking. My tummy shakes a lot.
So you just had a birthday.
In December, I turned 80. 80 years old.
Down at the Monument Inn, it was a big shindig.
Oh yeah, that's
Oh,
right.
yeah.
That's right. I
Yeah,
forgot
cost
about
me
that.
a couple of $1,000 to feed all them people
On your birthday.
on my birthday.
He's a giver, y'all. Don't you know?
No,
Just
I decided I wanted to throw myself a party, and I did.
yeah, why not?
Yeah, it gets expensive. We're planning my parents' 50th anniversary. They'll be married almost 52 years, but with COVID and everything, we couldn't have them a party, and my dad being sick and stuff. So we've been real careful
Oh,
about
wow.
that
So
stuff.
you've been waiting for that. Wow.
Oh, I wrote it off, but my mom is not letting me write it off. So we're gonna get a small group together, and man, it's getting expensive quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, those nice restaurants, they don't like to give that food away.
Yeah, right.
But
for
boy,
sure.
I'll tell you what now, Monument Inn is a place to go. They do a great job with that.
I always know when it's the first of the month when the Social Security check hits and all those things, because I see my parents, they'll put the little, nicer clothes on, like, where y'all headed? Monument Inn. That's
Yes,
funny. That's
sir.
funny. Well, let's just jump right into
Culture Corner.
Culture Corner.
Every time Caesar's not here for this to rap, I'm always like, oh man, Caesar's not here rapping.
Right?
You want me to go first?
Let's go.
All right. So the title of my culture corner says, archaeologists in Turkey have discovered the largest underground city in the world. And this was published a couple days ago, actually. So they just discovered this underground city over in the Turkey area. So far, it has 49 rooms in it that they've discovered. It's got places for worship. It said it had, worship altars, storage silos, water wells, all that stuff.
That's pretty cool.
And it's dating back. They said it's been dated back 1,900 years, so like almost 2,000 years ago. Wow. So this would have been like right after. This would have been in like the first century, basically. And the people that discovered it, a lot of them, they're speculating that this was probably a spot where a lot of Christians went, because this was back. The time that they're dating it back to is when the church was like, people were getting killed for being Christian and all that kind of stuff. And they said it was pretty common for them to have their own kind of private hid-away places to live. So they're thinking that there was a lot of people like that was living here, just anybody trying to escape the law, I guess, really. But yeah, they think they've only discovered, I believe they said 3% of it.
Wow.
So they're thinking it's huge. And if it's as big as they think it is, it would have been able to hold 70,000 people.
Wow.
Which is bigger. The last biggest place they found like that, I think they said it could hold like 20,000.
So Joe Osteen
20.
don't have nothing on this
Joe
church.
Osteen isn't even in the ball game, man. And this is all underground.
This is the mega churches
Yeah, so
before mega churches were cool.
They had cisterns, sewage systems, and all that kind of stuff under there. So it's pretty crazy.
So they have this new technology they're flying, this land sonar technology where they can fly over land now, and they can see through like vegetation and different things, and they're discovering a lot of these ancient cities. Another one that they found was there's a whole city under the Amazon forest.
Oh wow! Actually, I've heard about that.
Yeah, so what they're finding out, before the Amazon forest was even there was a city there, and it was a destination for people to come from around the world and live there. So what they're finding is a lot of the vegetation in the Amazon, what makes it so unique, that it's not from that area. That some of these people that came in have brought vegetation from other parts of the world, and it just took off in that atmosphere. So I think that you're going to start finding a lot of different ancient cities and different things like that being discovered with the new technology and stuff that they're
especially
having.
in the Amazon. It makes sense because it's so dense with all the vegetation.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you don't touch a piece of ground around here for a year, things get growing all over. And you imagine.
Yeah, don't cut your yard for 2 weeks. See what happens.
Imagine, however many hundreds of years or thousands,
Yeah.
And it's in the Amazon where things grow like crazy.
Yeah, they're finding all kinds of cool stuff in some of these ancient cities and stuff, and I think it's cool. Like before, to find this stuff, you had archaeologists out there with a pick and a shovel, and they're trying to dig through
How they
stuff.
do it in turkeys.
Yeah, and now they're just flying over, and they can spot this stuff from thousands of feet up and dial right in, which I think is real cool because when you look at that and compare it to our faith. That a lot of things that people tried to say are not true and they deny, they're going to start finding a lot of this, older stuff that's really going to tie in a lot of our faith and saying, okay, now try to deny this when the ancient writings and fossils and different things like that are going to be able to be discovered, and it's just going to tie everything in. And when you look at it as a bigger picture, all this stuff is beginning to happen when we feel like the end of times are coming and things are going to begin to probably speed up and roll a little bit faster, and the enemy's going to come in and try to deny things, but at the same time, the Lord's going to come back, and all this stuff is going to come back together and tie everything in together, and people are going to have to make the choice at that point. I mean, all the evidence is going to be there. The gospel is going to be sent out all over the world, and I think that's when, in my opinion, there's going to be no denying that God is real, Jesus died on the cross, and we're going to have to make the decision to accept it or not accept it. But there's not going to be any like, oh, was he really, is it really real?
Yeah.
No, it's going to be evident that Christ is real, and then there's going to be people that's just going to deny it. Just because they don't want to be a part of it. And I think that's the exciting part of it, that everybody will know. Every knee will bow, and you will know that it is real, and you have to accept it or not accept it. So,
Yeah, man.
Pastor, you got anything to say on that?
Well, I think, the evidence for the resurrection of Jesus Christ is overwhelming already. I mean, people deny it, but it's undeniable. I mean, Luke said it was proven by many infallible proofs that Jesus rose from the grave. I talked about that in our Sunday school class a little bit Sunday about the resurrection. People say, well, why do Christians celebrate Easter so much? Because it validates everything that we believe. If Jesus had not risen from the grave, like Paul said, we'd be of all men most miserable. We would still be in our sins. What we preach is not true. But he said, Christ is risen.
Yeah.
And that proves everything. All you need really to prove anything in a court is one reliable eyewitness. But Paul said, hey, wait a minute. He was seen by the 12 apostles. He was seen by me. He was seen by 500 people at one time. And there's no doubt whatsoever about the resurrection of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And that validates everything we believe. That's the foundation of our faith. If somebody ever asked me why I'm a Christian, I'd say it's because of the resurrection. If Jesus hadn't risen from the grave, we'd have no hope of salvation.
Yeah.
We'd have no hope of a resurrection. But he is risen.
That's right. No one before, no one after.
Absolutely.
Right? So,
absolutely.
So he is the Messiah.
So people, they either receive it or reject it now, but that's what sets Christianity apart from every other religion in the world.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. Good stuff. Not an animal story.
I know. I didn't find any good ones. I'm telling you, I don't just seek out the animal ones. Just a lot of times that's the good one. There wasn't any good animal ones this week.
So I got some super current a super current story. So as of yesterday, today is Tuesday as we're recording this, as of yesterday,
April 26th,
$44 billion deal went down, or Elon Musk
it got accepted?
bought Twitter.
Like officially? Because last I heard, they rejected it.
It officially went down yesterday.
Wow.
Twitter was worth $42 a share. He ponied up and paid $52 a share.
Yeah.
I think this is important. If you look at Elon Musk is a strange dude. He's super smart. He has a lot of things going. He's sending rockets to space. He's doing electric cars. But I begin to think about this. So I watched a few things, read a couple of things, and people are saying like he's only buying this to really propel his brand, right? To propel Tesla, SpaceX, and whatever else he has his name in. But I don't see it because he already has those spaces. He doesn't need Twitter. You know, he's already been able to put his stuff out there. But I begin to think about what he says about why he's going to Mars. And then the other thing I thought was pretty interesting, and I'll get back to the Mars thing in just a second. Other thing that I thought was interesting is I was watching this video of people that live in communist countries and like billionaires.
Yeah.
And they were saying like after billionaires get so big in these communist countries that the government ends up stepping in because they're making too much money. They're creating a name bigger than the government. So they step in, and a lot of them have ended up missing or dead or things like that. And then the government begins to take over that company and acquires it as funds for revenue for the government, right? So people were thinking, well, maybe he's doing it for that reason. You know, maybe he's doing it because he thinks like America's getting closer and closer to a communist country. So he wants to be able to take one of the biggest news outlets that's out there right now, not CNN, not the New York Times. Twitter is the biggest news outlet, and they are throttling. Yep.
Nice.
Back the conservative view. I mean, it's out there. I mean, Donald Trump was our president, and he's not even allowed on Twitter. So a lot of people are thinking, you know, that kind of tied into what I was thinking about why he wanted to go to Mars. And the reason that he wanted to go to Mars is that he wanted to save humanity, because eventually he thinks that Earth is going to consume itself. Yeah, we're just a meteor away from, you know, destroying itself. So I think that his ultimate goal is humanity. Like he wants to take this to Mars to save the human life, right? Yeah. And I think that another one, as far as him in his thoughts, not a Christian thought because he's not a Christian, but saving Twitter because it's the right thing to do for humanity, to have free speech, to be able to go and say that what we should be able to say in a free country. And then when you're worth almost, you know, $1 trillion,
yeah,
that's the right thing to do. Like if you think you can save humanity and you have the money, why not do it?
Yeah, I don't know. For him, I think a lot of people, when they talk about him, they seem to talk like he's got this hidden agenda for this, and he really did this because of this other reason. But I don't think he's that plotting like that. If you ever listen to any kind of interview with him and hear him talk about things, like I think exactly what he said is what he's trying to do. So when he talks about like I'm going to buy Twitter because I think free speech is important. I don't think it's happening on there, and it's such a big outlet. It's got to be, you need free speech there. I think that's exactly what he's trying to do.
Right. I think it's humanity. Like humans should be able to have say and do what they want, as long as you're not directly causing people to have, you know, bodily harm or different things like that. I mean, I think that you should be able to do it. I mean, I think that if you're gonna have hate speech, listen. If you have it, there's repercussions to those things. You know, people are not going to buy your product. People, they might come out and catch you outside of a restaurant and beat you up or whatever. Those things tend to happen. So what we are doing right now is we're called nerfing the world, right? We're making sure we put these little nerf things all over the sharp edges, and we don't let nobody get hurt. Well, what we're doing is we're taking away pain, which pain helps us know, hey, let's not do it next time.
Yeah.
You know? So
man, you guys are getting way deep in all this stuff. My goodness. I can say one thing. If he thinks he's going to save the world,
yeah,
he don't know what he's talking about, because there's only one Savior, and that's Jesus Christ.
I agree.
And this world is on its way out.
Yeah.
There's going to be a new heavens and a new earth. And
for him, it's Mars.
Jesus, yeah, he can be on Mars if he wants to, but I want to be right here when Jesus comes
That's
back.
what I'm talking about. But yeah, so we must make a difference.
Goodness gracious, where's the? There we go. That was nice. No, I like that he's doing it though.
Yeah.
I think he's a good dude, and he's trying to do what he thinks is right. Like with whatever he's doing with his space stuff, with his electric cars. Like, I think he's trying to do what he thinks is right, and he's got the money and the resources to do it. And I like that he's spending his money on those things. And like, go ahead, go for it.
I think it's funny that so he had to go to court, to come up with $44 billion.
Yeah.
You have to put things in place. So he goes to all of the banks, all of the major banks in the world, and say, okay, this is what I want to do. I'm going to need your backing. I'm worth it. He don't have $44 million in cash, right? I mean, he just doesn't have
his stocks.
$44 billion. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
it's all wrapped up in stocks and different things like that. So he has to go to the bank, and so all the banks were like, we're behind you, except the two that are already working with Twitter.
Oh, that's funny.
They're just like, nah, we're out.
Yeah, that's not surprising. Not at all. Isn't it funny that rich people don't spend any money? They just borrow all their money.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Well, that's the thing. So what they do is they keep all their money in stock. Mm-hmm. They draw a couple $100,000 a year in, salary. Mm-hmm. But then they borrow against their stock, so they don't pay taxes on it.
Yeah, because if it's in the stock market, you don't have to pay taxes till you take it out. So you leave it all in.
Leave
so
it
you
all
don't
in,
pay
borrow
taxes
it,
on it,
and then
you just borrow money.
So your interest rate is lower than your tax rate.
Yeah, it's crazy. Man.
So this is how rich people stay rich.
You just got to get that lump sum.
If you had money, you would.
Yeah, if I had any. Oh, goodness.
All right, well, I got a song for you today. This is Be All Right. Evan Kraft, Danny Goki, and Ready Me.
There's a name that can silence every fear. There's a love that embraces the heartache, the pain, and the tears. Through my faith and my doubting, I know one thing for sure. His word is unfailing, His promise secure. Todo va a estar bien, everything will be alright. Whole world's in His hands, your whole world's in His hands. In the darkness and the trials, He's faithful and He is true. The whole world's in His hands, y todo va a estar bien. Oh, 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 everything will be alright. Oh, oh, oh.
Yeah. Father, you say everything's gonna be alright, but my circumstances say I won't last through the night. I need your word to hold me now, need you to pull me through. I need a miracle, a breakthrough, I need you. They say you hold the whole universe in your hand, but my world's falling apart like it is made of sand. Am I small enough to slip through the cracks? Can you take my broken pieces and put them back? Give me faith to believe you are on my side. Open my eyes to see you working in my life. Let the past remind me you never fail, and tell my soul it is well. Oh, estar bien. Everything will be alright. The whole world's in His hands. Your whole world's in His hands. In the darkness, in the trials, He's faithful and He's true. Your whole world's in His hands. Y todo va a estar bien. Everything, oh, oh, everything will be alright. Oh, 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 yeah. Todo va a estar bien. Oh, 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 still I know everything will be alright. Oh, 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 yeah.
Yo, Padre, te confieso a corazón abierto que todo es muy incierto en este desierto. Mi vulnerabilidad está al descubierto. Siento que mi barca está muy lejos de su puerto. ¿Por qué será que ya no sale el sol en mis días? ¿Por qué mis noches son tan frías? ¿Por qué será que siento que me falta algo? ¿Por qué este camino gris se siente tan largo? Sé que estás sobrando aunque no te sienta. Sé que estás sobrando aunque no te vea. Sé que voy a salir de esta odisea. Sé que voy a ganar esta pelea. Sé que va a cesar esta marea temporaria. Que en ti yo viviré una vida extraordinaria. Y aunque no pueda entender, me consuela saber que
todo, yo sé que todo va a estar bien.
todo va a estar bien.
Everything will be alright.
All right, that's Be All Right. Evan Kraft, Danny Goki, and Ready Me. Danny Goki was American Idol, one of the American Idol winners, and he started off leading worship in his youth group. And he's really never wavered the music that he's done. When he was under contract with American Idol, he didn't do Christian music per se because I guess they probably wouldn't let him do Christian music, but it was all super positive.
Yeah.
And then once that contract ran out, he went straight back to doing Christian music again. So I thought it was pretty cool that he didn't get wrapped up in the industry like a lot of people do.
I didn't know you signed contracts with American Idol.
Yeah, I think the top 5 you're locked in.
Yeah,
you're locked in.
It makes sense.
Yeah, they're gonna build you up and do all that, and then they're gonna make their money back.
Yeah,
for sure. Well, very cool. 100 years.
100 years.
How long you been here? Them 100? All of them?
Just about.
Well, no, I've been here.
Half of them, huh?
Well, 80. That's but I was gone for about 7 years. That's when the Lord called me to preach and things, and that's another story. But actually, my great grandmother was one of the people that was in the group that started this church in 1922. Her name was Mary Ray, but everybody called her Molly for some reason. And she lived here in Magnolia Park around Harrisburg and the Boulevard there, and that's where the church got started.
And that was Anna Mae Ruth Manning was the first.
Yeah, it's not Ruth. I don't know where that got started, but her name was Roth. Anna Mae Routh was her maiden name. Anna Mae Routh, and then she married this fellow named Manning. So it was Anna Mae Routh Manning, yeah.
So how prevalent was it to have a woman leader at that time in church? I know that's kind of a big deal right now. People are kind of debating should women lead men and all that. But if you just take it back to 1920s, right? Yeah. Like women didn't even lead their homes, much less.
Did they even vote at that time? I'm trying to remember when that happened.
I'm not. Yeah, that's a good question.
I don't think they could.
But like it wasn't abnormal for a man sometimes to treat his wife like one of the kids. If she needed to be checked, he might backhand her or whatever. But for her to be leading a whole group of church members.
Yeah, that's been a debate for a long time among churches. Like, as far as I know, the Baptist church, they do not ordain women as pastors and so forth. It's okay for them to be doing everything else in the church, but for some reason they will not ordain women as pastors and so forth. And there's a lot of churches that are like that, but the Pentecostal kind of movement has not gone along with that, because the Bible says He's going to pour out His Spirit on all flesh, and your handmaidens, they're going to prophesy and so forth. So God doesn't look at folks like, you can't do this because you're a woman. I don't think so. Jesus Christ was the greatest champion for women's rights that ever lived,
Yeah.
And so anyway, I don't know. She was an evangelist. I don't know that she was really a pastor, per se, but she was an evangelist, and the church started after she was preaching on the street corner over there on Harrisburg Boulevard. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just an interesting thought. You have this debate, but if it wasn't for her, we wouldn't sit here 100 years later talking about all the great things and we'll get into some of those that this church is, have done. So what is your earliest memory of the church?
Well, as a child, however early you can start remembering things. I remember things that happened here in the church when I was 5 years old. I do remember that. But anyway, my roots go back to, like I say, to my great-grandmother, and then my grandmother, my daddy's mama. She was part of this church, and she brought some of her children to this church. My aunt Melba Turner, was my aunt, my daddy's sister, and she kind of grew up in this church. My daddy didn't go to church much until he got saved, but my relatives were part of this church.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're talking a lot about females.
Yeah. Well, that's true. Back then, most of the leaders were women. The men didn't come to church too much.
And I was looking at a picture. You can't really tell on this one, but some of the other pictures, it was mostly ladies that were in these pictures and moving and doing things in the church.
A lot of women, boy, they were the ones that were the prayer warriors. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I remember that.
I remember my grandmother telling me about prayer meetings and stuff that she attended.
Your grandmother and my mother, they were part of that prayer group, man.
Yeah.
That was a vital part of this church.
Right.
Yeah.
So moving from the dirt floors under a tent, we finally got into a structure, a building. What was the first name of the first church?
Well, they decided to call it Magnolia Park Pentecostal Church. Well, this was before my time. I've just done some research on it. And
Great book,
these
by the way.
things out.
Great book.
Oh, thank you.
Learned a lot.
My cousin Ray helped me with that a lot. He's into ancestries and stuff, and he found out a lot of this information that I was not aware of. But they were in this little church building, and they called it Magnolia Park Pentecostal Church. And then I tried to do some research. When Pastor Kitson became the pastor here in 1938, they moved over to 67th and Avenue Inn, and I think the church building was already there. I was wondering if they built that building or if it was already there, but I talked to my brother about it, and he said he thinks that building was already there, that they bought that building, and they changed the name of the church to Houston Gospel Tabernacle.
So, to your knowledge, was it a church before? Or was just the building they converted to a church?
No, it had to be a church building because it was definitely built as a church building. As a matter of fact, that building is still there. It looks better now than it did when we were there. Whoever bought it did a lot of renovation, and it looks real nice.
What is it? Is it a church?
It's a church.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a Pentecostal church.
Wow.
A Hispanic Pentecostal church.
And I'd almost be worth having him come over for our 100 years, you know?
I hadn't thought about that. I have never met the gentleman, but I've been by the church several times just to look at it.
Yeah.
And it's still there.
Do you know the name of it?
No, I don't
Something
know.
Espanol?
Yeah, something.
Yeah, man.
But that's interesting. I might try to go by there and see if I can meet the fellow.
Yeah, meet him or at least get a number. We can make contact.
Yeah.
I think it'd be cool for him, maybe even to bring his board or something over here. And
I hadn't even thought about that, but that's a good idea.
David's an idea guy.
We just got to make it happen. So there was, and I don't want to like skip over a bunch of these pastors and different things, but early on, before really Pastor Kitson, there was several pastors that kind of did a year stint or in and out.
Yeah, I was looking at that, and the first 16 years, there were, I think, 7 pastors, and most of them only were there for maybe a year because one of the pastors was there for 9 years. So if one pastor was there for 9 years, that means in 7 years they had another 6 pastors, I think. So some of them only lasted a year or so. And
Most of them.
Most of them, yeah, it had to be. But beginning with Pastor Kitson, that was really something because he was here like 22 years. And then Pastor McGee, 20 years. Then I was a pastor for 31 years. And so what is that? That's 40, 70, about 73 years, just 3 pastors.
Wow.
And that's unusual.
Right.
And, so, and now Pastor Mark's been the pastor for 9 years. So 4 of us,
They'll get the bulk of the time.
My goodness, for 80 years almost,
Yeah, and I think that's something that's might be a bad trend that's going on right now in churches, that these pastors are almost treating it like a business where they're jumping around and trying to get to the bigger church,
moving up the corporate ladder, instead of being somewhere and building it.
That's the structure of some denominations.
Yeah,
I mean, like the Methodist. They just appoint pastors, and so they start off maybe in a smaller church, and then if they do well there, they'll appoint them to be in a larger church and so forth. But I think most of the churches that you'll find that are really successful, the pastor's been there a long time.
Yeah.
You take First Baptist Church, the pastor's been there forever. And Second Baptist Church, Ed Young, my goodness, he's been there, 40 years or more.
Yeah.
And it's just, it works when the pastor's been there a long time, if he's successful.
Well, imagine it's a job that you're going to need a few years to get the hang of it,
Yeah, for sure. And I think also there is something about laying that foundation in the church. And when you go through those like pastors at 6, 7 pastors in 6 or 7 years, there's not a foundation that was left because it's constantly changing. And the next guy's coming in, he's doing something a little bit different. The next guy's coming in doing a little bit thing different. But when you see Pastor Kitson come in, he laid a foundation for people to build upon instead of starting new.
That's exactly right. Pastor Kitson was an organizer. He organized a lot of different pastors into associations and so forth. He was really good at that.
Yeah. So you was around 10 years old when Pastor Kitson came in?
No. I was Pastor Kitson was the pastor when I was born.
Okay.
Yeah. My mother joined the church in 1938. My brother was 16 months old when she joined the church, and I was born in 1941. So I started this church 9 months before I was actually born. And my mother, she was the song leader, and she was the church secretary, and she was Pastor Kitson's secretary, and she was a Sunday school teacher, and she was one of the prayer warriors, and she just, boy, she was all in. She was, involved in all the activities of the church.
She's what every ministry is looking for.
Well, she was, and there was not just her. There was others that were. But boy, I'm going to tell you, we never argued about whether we was going to church or not. If it was church time, we were going to church.
Yeah.
And it was kind of unusual back then, but I guess it was good. If we had a church activity and there was a school activity, we went to church.
Right.
Football games on Friday night. We didn't go to football games on Friday night because the youth met at our house and played volleyball and stuff. But that was just the way it was back then. Our roots were in the holiness movement. And you didn't cut your hair, and you didn't wear makeup if you're a woman and so forth. And you didn't go to picture shows, and you didn't know all that stuff,
Right. So was it before or after? So we were kind of Magnolia Park Pentecostal Church, and then Pastor Kitson moved it to Houston Gospel Tabernacle?
Yes.
Okay. And then when did the split happen where what's the church that just
Life Tabernacle?
Life Tabernacle. When did that split happen?
That happened just shortly before Pastor Kitson retired, and that was in 1960.
Okay.
So probably about 1958 or something. I'm not exactly sure about that.
Around that time.
Yeah.
So that was weird because growing up, half of my family was over there, and then the other half was over here, and I never understood why we didn't go to church together. But the older I got, when I found out that they stayed with the more of the holiness, don't cut your hair, don't wear makeup, the what do you call it?
UPC,
the UPC, and then,
actually. Pastor Kitson was involved in starting the UPC.
Oh, wow.
And as a matter of fact, I think he was like the general secretary or something of that organization when it first got started. But they got so, what's the word I'm trying to say?
Dogmatic?
Controlling.
Okay.
Over churches and so forth, that Pastor Kitson, as a matter of fact, I put it in the book. He said, we don't feel like that churches. Well, let me read it to you. He said, freedom means exemption or liberation from the control of some other person or some arbitrary power. And since each one of us will be held accountable to the Lord for our own actions, it's very necessary that we have freedom to follow the dictates of our own conscience and so forth. And he talks about Martin Luther and so forth. And so he started another organization called the IMA, or the International Ministerial Association. And that was a group of spirit-filled ministers and churches, but it was not anything like the UPC that became so domineering, controlling of their pastors and churches and so forth. So that's kind of where, our church came from.
Yeah. And I think it's a sad thing because there is something good about a denomination where you can bring much easier. You can bring a bunch of churches together, a bunch of the same denomination together. Yeah. But at the same time, being an independent, as a youth pastor, I was trying to do these larger youth events, And independent churches don't want to get together, especially when we're the larger of the independent churches. Oh, you're going to do something over there. Well, my people are just going to go over to your church. So I'm not going to let them experience what y'all are doing over there. Cause what y'all have might be better than what we have. And we don't want to lose our people.
Yeah.
And what I was trying to share with them, my goal was not to take your people. My goal was to be able to share what God was able to do with us and then the things that we're able to do with your people. And you build off of that with your church. But they're just so scared that they're going to go down the street and experience something different and lose people.
Well, we need each other. Churches need each other. And, when Pastor Kitchen was here, we were part of the IMA. And that was a fellowship of churches. And we had fellowship with other churches that were part of that group. When Pastor McGee came in, he took us out of that group, and we just became an independent church. And when I became the pastor here, I was in Assembly of God Church for 7 years total. And I enjoyed the fellowship that we had with other churches and the conferences that you went to. And, you just felt like you were part of something bigger than just your own local church. And, man, I just really wanted to have that fellowship. I didn't like to be just an island out here. And that's when I found out about this pastors' conference that was in Auburndale, Florida. Pastor Maxie Thomas invited me to go to that. And when I went, it was just a group of independent churches that came together for fellowship. And, it was so wonderful. They were singing the songs that we sang. Their doctrine was very similar to what we believed and so forth. And after a couple of years of going to that, that's when the Lord told me to do something like that here in Houston, because there's so many independent churches, small, most of them are small, and they need fellowship, but they don't know where to go to get it. And so that's what we did. We just started, so we're going to have a conference, I think what we called it back then, and we invited all the pastors that wanted to come, paid their way. And God just honored that. And it's still going. We just celebrated 33 years of doing that. And people have come from all over we don't have an organization. I guess you'd call it a fellowship, but there's no membership to it. People just come because they want that fellowship and they need each other. And we need to network with each other. Yeah. It's just been really good, really.
And that's, it's funny because I'll go to a different church or different places, and then we'll get to talking. Oh, you go to Elim Church? I've been in that conference, or I remember Pastor Ron or the different things like, and it just really brings that group closer together by just tying us in with something like that.
Well, I would just estimate thousands of missionaries and pastors through the years have come and been blessed through this. We call it now a convocation, because God says, hey, that's what it is. I've called this, I've ordained this. And so that's what a convocation is. But God's been good. A lot of people have been blessed through that.
So we had Brother Kitson, and then Pastor Kitson, and then Pastor McGee.
Yeah.
He came in after that. And I think I was like 8 or 9 years old when he resigned. He had a heart attack and he resigned, but he didn't leave the church, right? And he stayed a part of the church because there was didn't he come back and kind of take control a little bit for a minute?
Let me give you a little history of that. Pastor Kitson.
Can you tell us what year about this is? For me and a lot of people,
about 1958.
Okay, we're in the 58.
Okay, Pastor Kitson had been there a long
and
time.
I was not born in 58. And he was just here for a long time.
And in 19 '58, I was 17 years old, okay? And Pastor Kitchen been the pastor a long time, but as a child, I always thought Pastor Kitchen was old, man, okay? He looked old, and as a young person, I thought, man, this guy's got to be ancient. And he was, but he was only 70 years old. And to me now that I'm 80, 70 doesn't sound that old. But he was 70 years old, and a lot of people in the church felt like they needed a younger pastor. And so they had a big, I remember this very well. So they had a big church business meeting and to vote whether they wanted to keep Pastor Kitchen or get another pastor. Well, half the people voted to keep Pastor Kitchen, and half of them voted to get another pastor. And so the ones that voted to get another pastor, since they were outvoted, they decided to leave and start their own church. And that's where Life Tabernacle got started.
Okay.
And the problem was, for me and you, families were split up because my aunt, Lowly Green, and she was the mother of, Jabbo and Jimmy and Faye and Joyce and all of those folks. They were just young people at that time as well, but they all went with the group that left and started Life Tabernacle. But my mother stayed with Pastor Kitchen, and so we stayed there, my brother Dale and myself, my sister Janine, and so that's the way that went. But then a couple of years later, Pastor Kitchen decided he was going to retire. And by that time, his daughter, Mordale, had married this preacher from Ireland. His name was Gordon McGee. So Gordon McGee was Pastor Kitchen's son-in-law, and he became the pastor. We all loved Pastor McGee because he had been there to preach several meetings and so forth, and we just thought the guy was brilliant. I mean, and he was.
Right.
He was a great teacher, great minister. And so he became the pastor in 1960. And, it was during that time, 1969, then that's when we moved out here to Flagstone Street. And he was instrumental in building the building here.
Yeah. So if I remember, I'm just trying to think back over that period of time. Pastor McGee, he had a pretty good discipleship program, huh? I mean, just think about all the ministers that came out that are doing ministry or really stand strong in their faith came out of his ministry.
Yes and no.
He said yes and no.
He, Pastor McGee had a lot of different ideas about various things.
Was he Calvinist?
He was very Calvinistic. He was also believed that what they call the dead are dead. He taught about British Israel. There was a lot of things that, when you listen to him teach, you'd think, man, this is right. But the problem was it didn't fit in with any other church. So if you were taught by Pastor McGee, when you got out of that teaching, you didn't fit anywhere, really.
Yeah.
It was kind of like when I felt like the Lord was moving me out of Elim Church. I didn't know where to go.
Yeah.
Because I didn't fit with the Baptists. I didn't fit with the Assembly of God. I didn't fit with the Methodists. I didn't fit with the UPC. You know what I'm saying? Because Elim was kind of a little island of itself.
Right.
And so anyway, I tried to change that. Well, I did change it. When I became the pastor here, I said, we're not going to major on minors. I think that's what we were doing. We're going to major on the minors. Major on the majors, minor on the minors. And my philosophy was we're going to agree to disagree on some stuff.
Yeah.
We're going to agree on the fundamental things that we believe. We all believe. And Pastor McGee believed those things. But gonna major on something, whether British Israel or something.
And I think that's important when you talk about a larger group, right? Because you're not going to get a larger group together and then everybody agree on everything.
No.
Yeah, not 100%.
Not 100%.
You're not going to do it.
And you're not going to be able to witness if you're going to just be super dogmatic about a few small things, and which there's so much that we can agree on.
Well, we agree on 99% of what we believe. It's just the little things that we disagree on that. And our church, that's why our church never grew. I mean, it was like 150 people, forever. And I don't know, when I think that's why God caused me to be part of the Assembly of God Church for a while. And I was in a Baptist church for a year. I was a choir director and worship leader in a Baptist church for a year. And God showed me that his people are in all of these churches. Baptist people are saved just like I am. Assembly of God people are saved just like we're all Christians. We're all believers in Jesus Christ. Why do we fight each other so much?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. To get back to Pastor McGee, so he was doing his thing here for a while, and then he resigned because of the heart attack, right?
Well, he was here for 20 years. I mean, he was doing very well, and for 7 of those years, I was not here. Okay, that was looking back. God directs our path. God's leading us. At the time, I didn't know that, but God was leading me. He was getting me ready to really have a non-denominational or interdenominational church where people are welcome.
I like that inner.
Interdenominational. Well, non has a kind of a negative thing. We're not against denominations.
Yeah.
People can come here. Same way with our pastors. Convocation. We don't ask them where they come from. We got people from the Baptist church, the Methodist church, whatever. They come and we just lift up Christ. It's not about a denomination.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? But anyway, I lost my train of thought.
No, that's good, because I think, especially for our church, we have a lot of people that come out of the Catholic Church.
Oh, yeah.
And if we're sitting over here beating on the Catholics or beating on the Baptists, we wouldn't have these people that come to our church.
God's got his people in the Catholic Church.
Yeah, sure.
We disagree on, praying to Mary and so forth and so on, but God's got his people in the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
You know what was happening when I became the pastor here? Pastor McGee was preaching against the Catholic Church so much that no Catholic a Catholic person would come to our church and they'd give him a booklet about why the Catholic is so wrong, thinking they're going to win Catholics. When I came, one of the things
that's why I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt you. So that's why you was talking a while ago about God preparing you, because he needed to pull you out of some of that stuff to really try to so you can figure out.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The other stuff, because he was preparing you to accept a lot of these Catholics that were going to come.
I'm absolutely convinced of that, because if I never had left the church, well, I'd just be just like everybody else that stayed, I would not have this love for people of all denominations and backgrounds and so forth. But I remember I just started loving Catholics, and I didn't preach against the Catholic Church. I just preached for Jesus.
Yeah.
And you know what? We have communion every Sunday, and a lot of Catholics come to our church because they don't like the Catholic Church anymore. They don't think they're getting what they need in the Catholic Church, but they want to go to a church where they have communion every Sunday.
Well, you still see a lot of people coming in before they do. They come into the sanctuary. They're doing
the sign of the cross and all of that.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, I bet you half the people in our church today are former Catholics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So get back to the transition from Pastor McGee until there was a couple, I would call interims, but they wasn't really interims.
Well, what happened there was I was not here, but I'm very familiar with the church and so forth. And
so your family was still here, but you left, right?
No, we all left.
Oh, you all left. Okay.
We all left and kind of went to different places. But no, Pastor McGee, he had a massive heart attack, and he thought he could continue to be the pastor, but he couldn't do it all. Pastor Hale was here as his associate.
Another legend.
Yeah, Pastor Hale, wonderful man. And so he was kind of carrying on, and they brought this other fellow in whose name was Jim Brandyberry. Jim Brandyberry was a brilliant fellow, but he was hyper-Calvinist. If Pastor McGee was a Calvinist, he was
took it to another level, huh?
Over the top. But anyway, the church just started going down, and Pastor. Well, wait a minute. I'm getting ahead of myself. After Pastor McGee had the heart attack, he appointed, well, I don't know, I guess he was elected, Pastor Carol Rector became the pastor. Pastor Carol Rector had been saved in one of the revivals that we had at Houston Gospel Tabernacle, and he had become an ordained minister. He taught the adult Sunday school class at the church and so forth, and everybody loved Pastor Carol.
He said the Sunday school class. You heard he said?
I did.
Yeah.
They might have only had one. Did you only have one?
Well, the adult Sunday school class. We had other Sunday school classes, but
only one adult at that time. But the
only one, it was like held in the sanctuary, and it was the adult Sunday. But anyway, he became the pastor, and he was kind of overwhelmed with it. I think it was a little too much. Pastor McGee hung around and critiqued what he did, and I don't know all the story, but anyway, he ended up resigning.
So Pastor McGee really never went anywhere. He kind of just had his thumb on stuff.
Pastor McGee was still around and kind of overseeing things, even though Pastor Rector was the pastor. But when Pastor Rector resigned, then Pastor Brandyberry came in, and he was never elected the pastor. He was just sort of kind of holding it together, and if the church did well under his leadership, I think they were going to make him the pastor. But the church just kept going down and down, and so after he was here for about 6 months, Pastor Brandyberry decided, I'm not going to take this, not working out for me. And a couple of months after that is when Pastor McGee called me and asked me if he felt like God was telling him that I should be the pastor here, which was a total surprise to me.
Which is a great story in itself.
Yeah, great. And that was 1982.
Yeah. So how did that transition go? And did Pastor McGee, did he kind of back off a little bit and let you take it, or?
Pastor McGee was very, very cordial to me and very good. He himself said, "Look, I feel like I've made a mistake with Pastor Rector, and I'm not going to do that with you." He said, "I'm going to move to San Marcos, and if you need me, I'll be there to help you any way I can, but I'm not going to try to supervise you or micromanage what's going on, you know." And I appreciated that, because I said, man, I got to do my thing. I got to do it my way. and that's what I did. And
so now being on both ends of that, so you've had a pastor pass that down to you,
Yes,
and
sir.
you've passed that down to another pastor. Do you feel like that you would do stuff different now that you've done? You've been on both ends.
You know, I've tried to be supportive, very supportive of Pastor Mark, and I told him that.
Yeah, you've done a great
when
job.
I came over. I said, "Look, Pastor Mark, I want to be the best member you have, and I understand what it would be like if I'm trying to tell you everything to do, and I don't want you to feel that pressure, and so." To tell you the truth, I haven't been to a board meeting and I hadn't been to a staff meeting in 9 years because I did not want to, for Pastor Mark to feel like I was trying to tell him what to do. And I think it's worked out. I think it's worked out well because our church is still doing well. I mean,
Right.
And it's been through some tough times. I mean, this COVID thing for 2 years, I just have to give Pastor Mark, great honor for keeping things going the way he has. And
Yeah.
it seemed like we're coming out of it now, you know.
And I've been in private meetings with just me and him, you know, and it was a weight. You know, it was a weight on him on what decisions to make when, and people are in his ear telling him you have to keep the church going, and you know the county's in his ear telling him you need to shut the church down, and so I mean it was a huge weight, and for him, one thing that I respect Pastor Mark with everything that I have, but one thing that I really respect about him is he's prayerful about all this stuff.
Yeah,
you know, he spends time in prayer, and he just went through 90 days of fasting and 100 or something days, just to make sure that he heard from God that he was doing the right thing. And so
there's no question about it that he's very sincere and seeks God. And I appreciate all of that.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean that we always agree with every decision, right? But we know that whatever decision he's making, he's coming from a prayerful place.
If I want to be totally honest with you, it's not easy after you've been the pastor for 31 years just to back off and not have any input in what's going on.
That's why I ask you if you would do things different, because I know sometimes we want to give somebody so much space, but as a young minister, sometimes I was wishing that somebody would have been there a little bit more and for a little bit more guidance.
Well, maybe looking, I don't know.
Yeah, I know that's a tough question to put you on the spot on.
Yeah, because he's going to be listening to this.
And it's all in love. We're just trying to look back.
I love Pastor Mark, and I think he's done a great job. Would I have done some things different? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But, I didn't want to be the one telling him this is the way you need to do it. Because we're different.
Yeah,
I mean,
for sure.
That's as far as I go with it.
Okay, we'll just keep on moving. We'll have that private conversation about it. That was a tough one to put you on the spot.
I don't want that to sound like
for sure.
Problem.
You've done absolutely wonderful. And then every pastor that ever comes here talks about the transition and stuff, and
well, we really worked on it. He worked on it too.
Yeah,
I mean, it works both ways. It's not easy. It's not easy to transition from being the father figure to being the grandfather figure.
Have you read the book from Dr.
I've read a couple of them. Ron Bishop wrote one.
Bishop. I just ordered that book off of Amazon for my father.
And it's about transitioning from being a father figure in the church, like I was for 31 years, to now being a grandfather.
Is there a grandfather in the house?
And there needs to be grandfathers in the house. Yeah. We can't just go from Now we just have all young people in the church.
Okay, now we're going to promote the youth pastor and go.
Yeah, that's
you can't
it.
do that.
You need all those. Yeah. You need fathers. You need grandfathers. You need children.
And that's one of the things that, and we're kind of getting into your era right now. In 1982, you kind of taken over the church. One of the first big hires you hired was investing into the youth, right? You hired children's pastors, youth pastors. You thought that was important for the church moving forward.
Well, when I came here, the church was really at a low ebb. There was only 70 people in service the first Sunday I was here, and a lot of them left. There wasn't nobody on Sunday night and Wednesday night. And the Sunday school was way low. Not much of a youth program, children's program, and so forth. I just decided if we're going to have a church, a growing church, we need to have something excellent for all age groups. We need a children's pastor. We need a youth pastor. We need somebody for the senior citizens and so forth. So I put it on our advertisement. This is a family-oriented church. And so the first thing I tried to do was find somebody to be the children's pastor. And, of course, it was all volunteers, but as soon as I could, we started paying them a little bit.
Who was the first children's pastor you hired?
I can't remember the first one I hired.
Must not have been around very long.
Must not have been very good.
No.
Pretty unforgettable. Jeez.
He's really made his mark in this church.
We had several, but talk to me about the youth, and I can tell you a little more about it.
Yeah. Who's the first children's pastor you can remember? I know you're 80, so some of it doesn't come back as.
Yeah, David can relate.
Gosh, Christina's been here so long.
Well, you had Mark McEwen before him.
Yeah, right? Mark. Yeah,
and then
before him,
you had my cousin.
You don't remember your
Baldwin,
cousin's name?
Philip Baldwin.
Philip. Yeah. Before him,
I feel like I'm in a room with just the oldest people. Just both of y'all can't remember anybody's name.
Philip.
And I'm useless.
Was Philip before Mark or after Mark?
Philip was before Mark.
Tell you what.
Philip did a great job.
Yeah.
Philip did a wonderful job. And then so did Mark. Mark McEwen did a wonderful job. And they stayed here a long time.
Mm-hmm. I tell you what, I know the Ten Commandments because of a message that Pastor Mark preached in kids' church.
Yeah. Kidwell was the guy I'm trying to think of. Brother Kidwell was before that.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
I forgot totally about him.
Yeah, him and his family, and he did a good job.
Well, I left. My mom started having some health issues, so we went to the Baptist church for maybe 4 or 5 years because they had a bus.
Yeah,
they would come by and they would pick us up and take us to the Baptist church, and then we came back when I was preteen.
But we had a kind of a small youth group, but I decided we needed a youth pastor. And so I went out to, they used to have a Bible college out off of the old Beaumont Highway and Oates Road there.
Your old stomping grounds.
Yeah, and it was Church of God, Pentecostal Church of God Bible College and so forth. So I went out there and interviewed 3 students at that Bible college. And to make a long story short, Paul Owens was one of those students, and he just impressed me very, very much. And so we hired him on a part-time basis while he's going to college to be our youth pastor. And then after he graduated, he stayed on as a youth pastor and married Kim. And
that was late 80s?
Yeah, probably mid-'80s. Because I started being the pastor in 82, and so it wasn't too long after that Paul came.
because he was my youth pastor. He was my first youth pastor.
Yeah. And he was here for quite a while.
Yeah, I love Paul and Kim. They just did a great job.
I really thought that Paul would eventually become the pastor, but I wasn't ready to resign for a long time, and he wasn't ready to wait all that time.
Pastor, you always had a vision for the young people.
Yeah,
you always did. You brought Kim in to do lead worship.
Yeah,
and that was kind of bringing the younger person in to kind of do some of the newer music and different things like that. So you always had that in mind. Always had that. But let's talk about some of the milestones of your pastoralship, of buying land and building buildings.
Well, God was, to God be all the glory, but somebody's got to have a vision. Somebody's got to be the leader and so forth. And the church started growing, 1982 started growing, and so we went to 2 services, and both services were pretty well full. They say if you have 80% of your church full, you're full. You're not going to have 100%.
Gets that comfortable,
and you got to have parking,
especially Pentecostal people because they eat too much.
Well, it's just not going to work. If you get 80% of your, if your church, seats 100 people, if you get 80 people in there, you're full.
Like they say, your goldfish will get as big as the bowl it's in.
Yeah, there you go.
Same thing, right?
Guys or something.
I don't know.
Anyway, we were 80% full and so forth, and it was pretty obvious that we needed to, if we were going to keep growing, we had to enlarge. And I went, everybody into Pasadena in this area, we're moving out to Fairmount Parkway because that's where all the Anglos were going, and all the Anglo churches was going out that way. And so I went out there looking for land and so forth, and it was so expensive, and I didn't know what to do. And so anyway, I began to pray about it and seek the Lord about it, and I found out that the land behind the church was available. We had 1 acre, and so I could buy another acre. That would double our size. I thought, well, my goodness, that'll
be plenty.
That'll be good. It took us 80 years to get this far. Well, that ought to last us for another. So we bought an acre, and with an option to buy the other 3 acres and the old nightclub that was on that. Anyway, I don't know how much you want me to go into all that, but God, it's been a miracle kind of a thing. We did that. We bought the acre, and then we took the option on buying the other 3 acres over there with the nightclub and so forth. And my idea was we'd build a new sanctuary in between the two, what's now our youth building and our children's building. But we didn't have enough parking, and I could not get the permits to do that. And
the Lord was telling you your vision was too small.
Yeah, it was too small. I thought, I guess it was too small.
Yeah.
But anyway, during that 9 months of trying to get the permit to build a building, we even had plans for a building. We're going to hook it all together.
Wow.
I found out that the 10.7 acres over here on this side was available, which if I'd have went ahead and built that building over there, we'd have never had near enough room. And that's another whole miracle. But we paid $100,000 for 1 acre over here. Then we paid $330,000 for that other 3 acres in that building. So $430,000 we paid over here
for them 4 acres with the
and they
wanted on it.
They wanted $500,000 for the land over here where we are now.
10 acres.
Yeah, 10.7 acres. Of course, that included the easement back there. But anyway, long story short, we ended up buying this land for $100,000. what I'd paid for 1 acre over there, paid for 10.7 acres over here. It's just a miracle.
Yeah.
I know we don't have time to go into all that, but God had been so good. And then we built a new sanctuary, and then it was time to more Sunday school space and nursery space and so forth. So we built what we call the Nelson Wing, and we call it the Nelson Wing because one of the ladies, a long time member of Houston Gospel Tabernacle, in her will, she willed about $200,000 to the church. And so we used that money along with, it cost $1 million to do that, but we, in honor of her, we call that the Nelson Hall. And it's just been good. God's been good, yeah.
What do you, when you look back on ministry, where do you see that your greatest successes have been?
I think God's used me as a teacher more than anything else. I was out at Bonnie Bend Sunday. I went over there to eat, and when we got ready to pay our bill, the waiter said, "You don't know anything. Somebody paid your bill," and that's wonderful when that happens. It don't happen much. By the way, whoever's listening to this, that sure would be nice. But no, and he said, he didn't tell me who it was, but then he kind of, motioned with it was that lady over there. And so I went over to talk to this lady, and she had been a member of our church. She hadn't been here now in quite a few years. But she said that she just remembered that I taught her basically everything she knows about the Bible. Wow. And she just wanted to thank me for that and so forth. And I hear that quite a bit because I did do a lot of teaching in the 31 years that I was here. I think God gave me a gift to do that.
Yeah. I think one of your greatest things that you do is you're such an encourager. I just know in my life, you was always speaking things in my life before they happened. Mm-hmm. When I was a young minister preaching, there's a preacher, there's a preacher, there's a preacher. Then when I went from that to really trying to think about being your pastor, then there's a pastor. You begin to speak it into my life, and it just really encouraged me and to build me up. Okay, I can do this. I do have the God has given me the ability to step into this next part of my life because you were speaking those things in my life. And some people do love out of overflow, and some people love just the love. If we have time, I will love you. If we have time, I will stop and help you change your tire on the side of the road. If we have time, that's all out of overflow. If we have some overflow, we'll give. Yeah. You don't do that. You do that because it's a calling on your life, and you love people. Even if you don't have time, you don't have to wait until the overflow.
I think if you're going to be successful as a pastor, you really have to love people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I love a guy like Randy Caldwell. I mean, the guy's a great preacher. We love to hear him preach and so forth. But he'll say, "I just don't like people." Seriously. I keep thinking, well, man, if you don't love people, don't talk bad about my people. I love these people.
Right.
I'm telling you, man, it upsets me when pastors get up there or preachers get up there and start bad-mouthing your church. Man, this is God's church. Yeah. Give my life to this church. Don't be talking about my people, I love people. People, none of us are perfect, for sure. But, you were talking about encouraging people. I think it's important. I remember when Pastor McGee called me and said he felt like God called me. I knew God called me to pastor a church. I just didn't know it was going to be Elim. But I knew I was called to pastor a church. And when he called, and God made it very, very real to me, and that I was going to pastor this church. I remember my cousin, who was a pastor of a big Pentecostal church in town, and we were going somewhere, and I told him, God's called me to be the pastor of Elim Church. And he said, I give you about 2 years, maybe 3 years, but you ain't going to make it.
Wow.
I'm telling you, I still remember that. I remember that vividly, that somebody would say that to you. And I went to talk to my brother at the Houston Chronicle, and I told him, I said, Dale, Pastor McGee has called me and said that he felt like God's called me to be the pastor here, and what do you think about that? And my brother said, well, you've been successful as a choir director in high school, and you've been successful at this, and you'll be successful at that. And he said, if God called you, you're going to be successful at it. And he said, I'll tell you one thing, I will be there to help you.
How much of a blessing has it been to have him in your corner through all these years?
My brother is my hero.
Yeah, one of my heroes too.
Yeah, he's faithful.
Yeah.
And when he says he's going to do something, he'll do it. And it's been a great blessing, you know. And whatever he does with excellence. Yeah.
I think a lot of people see you getting emotional there, and you kind of get me a little bit emotional too. I think a lot of people see you as the face of Elim throughout the years, but people don't see people like Brother Dale that's been behind you, doing everything that he can do to make you successful so Elim can be successful.
That is true. And he's got a lot of, this is the way it is. He's got a lot of gifts that I don't have. You got a lot of gifts I don't have. James got a lot of gifts I don't have. We're going to reach people just like Jimmy, our building superintendent. He's reaching people I'll never reach.
Yeah.
I'm reaching people he'll never reach.
That's right.
That's why we're all so vital. We're all so important. That Pastor Mark's message Sunday was great.
Yeah.
We need a teamwork, and of course, the Bible says that. Every member of the body is vital, whether you see them or not. They're vital.
Yeah.
And I've learned that to be true so much. Pastor just one. It's a key role, but it's not the only role.
Right.
Pastor can't be successful unless he's got a good team,
So going back to the whole kind of the theme of your ministry, always looking to the younger people, right? When you got hired, you thought it was important, children's church. When you got hired, you thought it was important to build the youth, and over the years, we have some of the. We don't have the largest youth. We don't have the largest children, but we have an effective programs in both of those areas. And you started getting a little older. You still had that same mindset in place where you thought, well, maybe I'm not in the position now that I can still reach the younger generation. And you decided to take a step back and turn the church over to Pastor Mark. How was that whole, transition and kind of what's leading up to that transition? How was that for you?
See, you put me on the spot here again, man.
And you don't have to tell you the. No,
I'll tell you, it was a tough decision.
Yeah, because there's going to be other pastors and ministry leaders that are going to be listening.
Sometimes I still question myself because I love to preach.
Yeah,
I still have an anointing on my life. I really do.
Oh, for sure.
And I feel like I could do it as well as I ever could do it. On the other hand, I feel like I am old. In my mind, I don't feel old, but I am old. You know, I mean, it's just the way it is. I'm 80 years old, and I don't identify with kids like in younger folks. Man, when I get out there on Sunday and I see all the young couples and the young people in that second service, I'm just thrilled because that's great. Because you see a lot of churches and it's all old folks, and when they die, the church dies. That's not happening here.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm thrilled with that. But I don't like the music.
Yeah.
I'm just being honest. We have a preference on what we like.
Yeah.
And so I guess it's good that I'm not the one in charge, because
but you did the same thing, right? You brought drums in the church. You brought Kim Owens a lead, which she was a little bit more edgier than the people before. So it's kind of one of those.
Well, I mean, our church has always been that way.
Yeah,
I mean, we've had great music ever since I can remember. I mean, and certainly I was part of that. You know, back in the day, it was Andre Crouch and Lanny Wolf and all those songs. You know, Baptist church singing hymns and we're singing choruses and stuff.
I tell Sandra all the time, when I get to that area in my life, just remind me when I was younger, you know, that I was part of that whole movement. You know?
Hey, let me clarify. I don't want the people to think I don't like their music. I mean, I love our worship team and that second service.
For sure.
I just I like to sing songs that I'm more familiar with. I can worship, and that's just the way it is, you know. Yeah. But I don't know. I guess I ought to shut up because I don't want those. I don't want those people to think I don't love them and appreciate them, because they do a great job.
Yeah, I don't think anybody.
I just don't know the music. Right. I don't know their songs.
It's a generational thing. It's just nothing that, you know. I think what's your cousin that has the church in Austin?
Rex Johnson.
Rex Johnson. You know, he said something one time that just made me think, and it just is burning in my mind, because just in case one day that I get there, he was just like, he was up in the front of the church, you know, he was worshiping and they're playing this new modern music, and he was just like, what is this stuff? Yeah. Who can worship to this? You know, we need to get back to playing some of that older music. And he turned around and he seen his whole church crying and lifting of hands and worshiping to God, and he said he just repented right there.
I do. I've had the same experience. You know,
so it's just one of those things. It's a generational thing.
I think we all have preferences, and I think people say that whatever you really enjoyed in your late teens and early 20s, that's what you're going to like the rest of your life. You know. Yeah. Well,
I tell my kids that ain't real rap. You know, that's not real rap. Was in the 90s.
I don't get to rap. You know, I don't get it. But anyway, and I understand that. Yeah. That's why I'm trying to play this grandfather role.
Yeah. And it's important, like.
But they need to listen to some of this old folks sometime. Play a song I like.
And you know, I've talked to Pastor Caesar about it, and he's done it here more recently, where he kind of ties a new song and an old song in together. And when he does that, I mean, it goes off, man.
That's what you well. Caesar, that's what you need to do.
And we're all
just throw a little crumb in there for us old folks once in a while. No, I'm telling you, but some of those songs, once you get to know them, I mean, great songs. Yeah, some of them are great songs.
And you know, the funny thing about it is, the older I get, you know, when Brother Stacy will pull out a hymn, I'm just like, oh, that's so good. Which 10 years ago, I'd be like, oh, man, we're going to listen to this hymn again. But now I'm just loving them, because I guess I'm getting to that age where I'm a hymn lover now.
Some of those hymns are like the Bible. I mean, you know, you learn the hymn, you learn the Word of God. That's what they are.
But you know that, you know, we're singing modern day hymns now. Yeah. I mean, the songs that we sing now, 50 years from now, will be a hymn to the next generation, you know, those generations.
Exactly.
So, Well, Pastor, we want to save Pastor Mark's segment for Pastor Mark. So
Good.
That's why I was just trying to just see, the transition and all those things. And, you just really had the vision for the next generation. And I appreciate that. So many pastors are going to die on their platform, and then they're not going to have the vision to turn it over to the next generation. So, the worst thing that I see in culture right now is churches being tore down because they built it off of a face. Mm-hmm. They built it off of them. And when they died, the church died, and they didn't have the vision enough to send it to the next generation.
Well, that's one thing that I prayed, oh God, don't let that happen to Elim. When you put your whole life into something and you don't want it to die. You want it to thrive. You want it to grow. That'd be the greatest thing that ever happened if the church just continues to grow. And I just had a little part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
30 plus.
30 something years.
Well, it's been 40 years now that I've been either pastor or pastor emeritus.
Yeah.
So,
That's 40%.
A lifetime.
Yeah.
A lifetime.
And of course, before that, it was 40 years that I was about 33 of those years, I was either the choir director or I was a youth pastor and all
You're
that
contributing.
kind of stuff growing up. So I've been here most of my life.
Well, Pastor, I love you.
Love you too.
I appreciate you, man, and everything that you've done and everything that you continue to do. We all love you around here, so thank you for your service.
I feel it. I feel it.
Yeah.
And honestly, from my heart, I love his church. I love the people in his church.
All right, well, thank you for stopping by today.
All right, man.
This is the Refuge Project.